Says I'm live. Yeehaw. All right. Hey everybody, how you doing? I know it's been a minute. That's why I wanted to do a live. I just want to give you guys all the updates, all the new stuff. There's so much new stuff happening, and it's gonna take me a while to get out. I've been like burning my brain to put all of this stuff together, but we've got the papers. What I have in front of me is gonna blow your mind, and it's gonna hopefully my intention is to like break the guitar teaching universe and all this stuff, this garbage that people keep saying. Oh, it kills me so hard. I can point to like a scientific reference for just about everything that I say or teach now, which is incredible. Nobody else can do it. Everyone's just like, how'd you pick like this? It's like, no, you don't freaking get it. So let's do some updates first. The first thing that I want to like say, which is like, I don't know, weird. I don't know how to explain this, but I was practicing guitar super hard from like October 2023 to like August 2023. I was in it so hard, and I got a lot of great. I think I made a lot of good work, and but I also burnt out pretty hard, and I've been taking it easy for kind of a few weeks and kind of like going like, oh, it's not just all about how fast I can play. And I was really stuck in this big comparison game. And naturally, music's kind of weird because, you know, if you go out and audition or you're on Instagram or whatever, who gets picked for the gig, right? The person who gets picked for the gig is the person who plays the best. But what I want to say is that playing the best is, and this is not like a cop-out. I'm not demeaning anybody else or excusing myself from being less than my potential. What I'm encouraging you to do is to find a middle ground that's sustainable, number one, and number two, employable. It's not all about how fast you can play or whatever. It's also about being a good hang. It's also about having very, very, very broad musical knowledge. It's about being able to adapt quickly. And these are the things outside of just your playing ability that are going to get you like a gig in the real world. I mean, the teacher that I'm working with currently, I still love doing lessons. And the main reason I do lessons is, which I'm mostly focused on like jazz stuff now, and just kind of miscellaneous guitar stuff, is he said there's this joke among professional musicians, and that is, it's not, oh, hey, do you know how to play X? It's, and the response is, well, how fast, like, when do you need me to play it by? And so as long as you're adaptable, it's good. And most of the stuff that you're going to be playing is not going to be This Dying Soul, and unison on everything. And so with that in mind, I got into a band in August called Luminatus, which I'm very excited about. And they've been around for a while. Marketing, I'm speaking honestly, in my opinion, hasn't been the greatest. Luckily, that's what I do for a living. So I'm working on punching up the marketing. It also takes a lot of time. Also, a lot of stuff has changed in my life with regard to work. So I'm working to get some new clients and things onboarded, and some priorities have shifted there, which has been a real challenge. End of September, beginning of October, all that started. So that's been really tough. So we have Luminatus going, which is great, and I have transcribed all of the material pretty much from scratch, and had to learn all of that. And then I also switched the whole pedal board thing over, got off Fractal, got onto Kemper, and that took some time to program as well, and we did a video about that, which is a lot more simple to produce. So that's kind of what's going on as far as like my guitar practice. I'm not like dead set on like completing, This Dying Soul, right now, or In the Name of God, no legato. Like, those are things I eventually want to do. But it's okay for me to not have that intensity right now. I've got my gig, so to speak, and I need to focus on doing my best for that gig, which is great. The next thing is that I've also brought singing into the mix now, which is great. I've been working with a wonderful vocal teacher, Chloe Lowry, who sings with Trans-Siberian Orchestra. If you want a vocal teacher who is encouraging and can handle all of the technical questions that I like to ask, I highly recommend Chloe. I think you should just search her name, Chloe Lowry, LOWERY.com. I don't know if she has a separate site, but it's like Vocals by Chloe Lowry. That's her lesson stuff. And you can get scheduled with her. She's great. So singing, usually when I practice singing, I have work about 10 to 6 is usually when I do my work these days. And when I do a singing practice session, it usually takes me about 2 hours to get through everything that I really want to get through. And I'm really, really, really focused on, from the start, building a really sustainable technique. So that takes some time as well away from the guitar practice stuff. So now the next thing that I've been spending a lot of time doing, which is not necessarily guitar, is reading literal research papers, okay? So I literally have this binder full of research papers that I've been reading, and it has been blowing my mind and changing the way that I teach and changing the way that I practice. And I really just wanted to go over one of these studies today. And specifically, I wanted to talk about sync, because there's so many people. I mean, I got an ad for a picking course on Facebook today that was like, we'll teach you how to fix your sync. Or like, there's videos on YouTube that are like, here's a synchronization exercise. Guess what? It literally doesn't effing matter what you play for a sync exercise. By the science, it doesn't matter. There's nothing in any exercise that will give you more sync or less sync. Okay, you know what gives you sync? Attentional focus. Okay, that's what this research is. That's what we're going to go through here. I'm going to explain that in a second. So before we get into all the science, I want to tell you why I've been reading all this science and when this started. When did my addiction start? It probably started in, October, November 2023. And I had done all of these lessons with all of these well-known teachers. And I had asked, if I name these people, you'd be like, wow, that person gave you that advice? And I'm not dogging on them. All of this will be explained shortly. But okay, if these are the best players in the world and I do the same thing as them, why don't I get the same result? Number one. Number two, why is it when every other player does the things that every other speed picker instruction person says to do, it's also mixed results? Why isn't there one thing that works for everybody? That is a question that has plagued my mind with marketing, with guitar, with everything. I've always asked that question. I've always wanted to understand the most fundamental mechanisms, and the most fundamental mechanism of how we play, learn, absorb, perform, reperform music, encode it. The fundamental underlying thing in all of that is neuroscience. There's not one. Oh, I'm getting a call from my friend. There we go. There is not one other teacher on the entire internet teaching how neuroscience applies specifically to music performance and technique development, not just practice. Okay, everybody knows about chunking, but I have a whole opinion on chunking. So, in my opinion, there's 3 types of chunking. Most people only talk about one. And in the research, it's very vague as well. So I started. So in October 2023, I had done all these lessons with everybody, and I was like, I've literally spent $10,000 on all these music lessons over the past couple of years, and I'm still not where I want to be. WTF? I saw the videos. Everybody's seen the videos. You can learn to play 200 BPM in 2 weeks or whatever, and it's like, no, you can't. Just in the same way that if you took any random adult and they said, I want to run in the Olympics, you'd say, okay, good luck, buddy. Number one, do you have the genetic potential? Which I don't think you necessarily need genetic potential to play guitar. I don't think it's as specialized because there's kind of a variable skill ceiling based on what you want to play. But if you take that, for some reason, people have this belief with guitar where it's just like, oh, anybody can do this thing and they can do it in a matter of weeks. When you look at players like Petrucci or Rusty Cooley or, whoever. And usually they started, when I looked up the average age, it was the average age for starting guitar was 10, which all the neural connections in your brain are not formed yet at 10. So it's a really good time to learn stuff. So what's weird about me is I started guitar at 22. I started very, very, very late, which should be again, I don't mean to toot my own horn. From a neuroscience perspective, it should be extremely impressive what I'm able to do with my right hand. I'll have a clip coming out soon of me using my wrist only to play at 220 BPM. It's ridiculous. So you guys will see it soon. Actually, it's up on Instagram. If you go to Instagram and you go to the highlight called Perfect Picking. So anyways, I got into all this neuroscience stuff, and what I realized was this was the real key to learning how to play fast, was understanding how do we get the brain to form a connection to the hand to do a thing. And yeah, that's the whole deal. So I created a course around this after, actually I have this is my practice journal. You can see all the pages. Hold on, let's see how many pages of notes I have. We're just going to give kind of a quick flip through here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I mean, this is probably like 40 pages of notes, okay? With like notes from lessons, practice journaling, breakthroughs I've had. They're all in here. And I really started figuring out this picking system in like October. And if you go to the Perfect Picking highlight, you'll see all the videos. I'm not going to go through them now. But what I realized is change can happen. It can happen very fast. And I figured out some things early on, but I figured out this aspect recently. So let's talk about this. I've been kind of rambling. Long story short, if you want to get into Perfect Picking, there's a beta course. It's not a beta course. I'm just letting in a couple seats to kind of get the good word in about it. And people have been responding extremely positively. So I'll leave the link in chat there. So if you want to check that out, it's an amazing system that talks about how to use neuroscience and physiology and classical pedagogy and all of this stuff I've read and researched and applied to guitar and done amazing things with. That's like, there's the pre-purchase link. There's 8 seats left. So if you want to get in for a very low price, that's time. Let's talk about this though. Okay, that's what I'm here to talk about. And then I got to go play arcade games with my friends. So this study is called Focus of Attention in Musical Learning and Music Performance, a systematic review and discussion of focus instructions and outcome measures. And I was like, there's something very interesting that I realized actually as a young bass player, because I started on big string bass, classical string bass, and I realized that I could play an exercise and I could put my mind in different places on that exercise. I could focus on how does the string feel, or like, okay, this time when I play it through, I'm going to focus on being really accurate with the bow hand. Okay, and now this time, like I've kind of got that part down. Now I'm going to focus on the left hand. Okay, and so I'm just going to read the top article of this, and it's kind of dense, but we'll skip through and we'll just kind of go through my notes on this. So it says, let me see if I can share my screen here, actually. This will be fun. Focus of attention. And I actually want to do it from my handwritten notes here because it's a little better. Okay, and then we got to do the switchy thing. I forgot what. There we go. Okay, cool. So I just want to make sure my mic. Okay, mic's working. Is it working twice? Yeah, it seems to be working twice. Okay. Yep. There we go. All right. I'm just going to double check in YouTube real quick. I know. No. Okay, great. It's working. So the topic of attentional focus, aka focused attention or FOA in musical learning performance, has recently received increasing interest as a growing number of empirical studies inspired by the established focus of attention paradigm in sports. Too many people are like, oh, music's it's this own thing. No, music is sports, dude. By Wolf and colleagues in 1998. The current systematic review aims at collecting, abstracting, and categorizing relevant data to show what kinds of FOA instructions, aka how we instructed people and how it applies, were applied in experimental designs, and what kinds of dependent variables were used to measure the effects of FOA on musical performance. The 3 main inclusion criteria in the selection process were experimental design, detail. So how did they set up the experiment? Detailed descriptions of what kinds of instructions they gave, and the outcome measures, aka did the player actually perform better when we gave them these little different pieces of instructions. A systematic search was conducted with a complex search term, blah, blah, blah. We looked at a bunch of studies. They found 387. We put them in 9 different subcategories. They ended up being what they called bodily focus, sound focus, and visual focus. 63 studies went into 10 different outcome measure categories with expert ratings, acoustical analysis. So how did they measure whether it was better? Did they use a panel of experts to say, okay, hey, you're sounding better? Or did they use acoustical analysis to kind of go empirically, okay, this sounds better because here's what it looks like on the computer. So as the most applied dependent variables. So these were the top two things. Data categorization and abstraction of additional study information show multiple combinations of FOA instruction outcome measures, multiple expertise, and musical tasks. So they measured different things and in the studies. Finally, studies show no consistent results of superiority of either external or internal or otherwise different FOA considering positive effects on musical performance. Limitations of the review lie in small study sample. I think they got down to, how many studies did they get down to? 53. Out of 387, they only worked with a couple of them. 53. 15 studies. Okay, so they got 53 different instructions from 15 studies. So this is from 15 studies, which I haven't gone into all 15 yet. I'm probably not going to go into all 15. That's a lot of reading. And actually messaged the author of this study and got a response, which was pretty cool, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So we propose a research agenda with a more exploratory approach that comprehensively and qualitatively examines the dimensions of musical goals to create a database that can provide a foundation for developing a music-specific FOA model. So a lot of things, sports, obviously there's a whole lot more money involved with like sports and, NFL and Olympics, and there's a lot more money that goes into that than studying music and music performance. So I'm going to switch back over to camera now. It's this button. Okay, great. So there's a whole lot more money in that. So usually music doesn't get covered as much, and it doesn't get covered as well. So the fact that we're getting like musical studies now is fantastic. Hooray. So they looked at all this different stuff. So basically what they did in a bunch of different studies is they said, okay, piano players or violin players, we want you to focus on moving the finger when you press the key, and we're going to measure if you play more accurately when you focus on the finger. Or we're going to have, or like violin players, we're going to have you focus on the shoulder. Okay, they had them focus on these different aspects, and what happens when they do that is that, long story short, with this study, meta-analysis actually, when people focused on the sound, then they played more accurately. Okay, now this is really important, and this is what I messaged the author of the study about, and we'll get deeper into my little annotations here. I said, okay, it's great that any musician who watches or reads this and goes and tries to apply it says, oh, just focus on the sound, just focus on the sound, just focus on the sound. But the problem with that is that your brain learns in like a neural network kind of thing, where there's multiple inputs and there's what's called a complex output. Okay, so multiple inputs would be when I hold the bow of the violin, do I bend my thumb? Is my wrist like this? Is my wrist like that? Is my elbow in? Is my elbow out? When I'm on the piano, are my shoulders like back? Am I holding them up? Are they tense? Like there's so many different variables on the front end of this thing that you have to get right in order to meet what I'll call a complex output goal. So a complex output goal would be that you want to play fast, and that you want to play without tension, and that you want to, be able to shift easily. That could be shifting on the guitar, could be shifting keys on the piano. It could be that another outcome is that you want to make sure that you aren't staring at your hands the whole time, and you want to be able to look around and engage the audience and things. So what can happen is if you take a beginner player, which by the way, most of these studies, at least the citations that I did flip through that I felt were most relevant, most of them involved expert players. And speaking frankly, I've had more years of my life in music lessons than I have not. So maybe I'm not the best guitar player in the world, but I would consider myself somewhat of an expert on pedagogy, and especially how this stuff is formed. because I'm able to have these sorts of intelligent discussions with the authors of studies like this. So they were on expert players. So if you take expert players and you say, focus on sound, focus on sound, focus on sound, what happens is that they use their existing base of technique in order to meet the outcome, the complex outcome, which has multiple variables, not being tense, playing fast, whatever it is. They use their existing technique base in order to accomplish that. What happens if you take beginner technique players is that they do something else. They do something where they make up a technique in order to best meet a complex output goal. And you can see this if you go on YouTube and you look up a video called AI Invents New Bowling Techniques, which is one of my favorite videos of all time. And it shows that he gives the robot all of these various all these various goals to meet. He says, we're going to reward it for the ball traveling fast down the lane. We're going to reward it for the ball landing in the correct lane. On the output side, he gives it these rewards. And on the input side, he says, we're going to give it all these variables. It's going to understand the location in space of all of its joints. It's going to understand if it's standing upright. And it's a whole lot of variables and angles and math and stuff. It's very simple and fun and entertaining video. So he does this, and then he runs the simulation for like 20 hours or whatever. And it fails, and then he runs it again, and then he runs it again. And what happens is that the AI came up with 3 different techniques, just like guitar players come up with all kinds of different techniques to pick the guitar. Kind of weird. So what did the AI do? The AI did something that he called like rubber banding, where it would like use like the slingshot of its arm to get the ball going down the lane. And then it did like another thing where it would like fall on the floor and then kind of wiggle around and like get the ball slowly rolling. And then I forgot what the other thing did. It's a very entertaining video, and I highly recommend you go watch it. So it came up with all these different things, which technically met the goal. But what ended up really happening in that first test is that the AI ended up optimizing for one of the goals. And this is something called local optima. And so what happens with guitar players and local optima is that they go, oh, I want to play fast, or I want to play without tension, or I want to be able to string skip really well. And so they've got 3 goals, and they've got an unknown number of input variables, which is, how do I hold the pick? Am I using wrist rotation? Am I using flexion? Where's my arm in space? Am I involving my pecs and my lats, which I've seen a lot of players do over the past few months teaching this stuff? Doesn't matter the experience level. Nobody has any idea what muscles they're activating until I get with them. And then I see them on a Zoom camera, and I'm like, hey, are you moving your back? And they're like, oh, yeah, that's weird. And I'm like, yeah. So, yeah. So we've got all these input variables and output variables. So what ends up happening is that people just repeat an exercise over and over and over and over and over and over and over again until they lock in a bad habit that optimizes for like being able to string skip or playing accurately or playing fast, but at the sacrifice usually at one of those other 2 things. And so I was like, how do we create an equation that allows us to have all of those things? And well, that's what I did with perfect picking. It's an amazing system that'll teach you exactly how to do that, which is really exciting. So now that we understand a little bit about all of these different things that happen when we try to learn and teach ourselves technique on the guitar, let's dive back into this focus of attention study. So it says 1.2, attentional focus in motor learning and motor performance. So an internal focus equals like a body focus. So an internal focus would be, okay, I'm going to focus on not activating my pecs when I play. And then an external focus, I rewrote as an equipment focus. So it's like, I'm going to focus on how the pick feels on the strings of the guitar, or I'm going to focus on that feeling that my left hand has when it slips across the strings or when it presses down a string. So, and then the furthest most focus that you could apply would be a focus on the sound. Okay. Now, what I figured out, and I messaged the study author about this, was okay, I think it's great that you figured out that if people focus on sound, they get better results. But I think that, respectfully, I think that you're missing something here. And let's see what my next note is. There's a couple questions that I had. Okay, cool. So I proposed to the author of the study. I'm actually going to go look up my email right now. Let's see. Give me just a minute here. And focus. FOA idea. All right, here we go. So I wrote, hey Jesper, I'm very much enjoying reading your and Anna's paper on focus of attention, published April 2024. I'm just digging onto this, and I wanted to share some perspective as an extremely highly trained musician teacher that I think could significantly contribute to the conversation. I think one thing that much of this research focuses on is merely the outcomes, which is what most guitar players do. They go, I do this and I play fast. And it's like, yeah, but how are you playing fast? Because there's a difference. There's pros and cons and drawbacks to the different ways to play fast. I could play fast in the way that Eddie Van Halen does it, but it's a horrible way to skip strings. And people go, oh, Eddie Van Halen's great. And yeah, he is. But there's a difference between a great musician and a highly technical player. And Andy Wood said this, okay? Don't take it from me. Andy Wood said it. He said, you can find it on Instagram. It's pretty recent. He said, Eddie only got, his technique was only as good as it needed to be to do what he wanted to do. And he didn't go beyond that, which is why if you took Eddie Van Halen and you tried to say, okay, Eddie, play this dying soul, number one, I don't think his picking technique would sustain it. Number two, it would, maybe if he could do it, it would take him a lot of practice, which I think a lot of what happens with people when they're talking about picking is they go, oh, well, can you play this? And it's like, well, yeah, I probably could, but do you understand that like the person who played that alone and wrote it practiced for weeks or months to be able to do it in the first place? So it's kind of just a thing. So I think that much research focused on is merely the outcomes. Does the committee judge that the performance is better? This is not enough, I say. Reading FOA studies would lead someone not so familiar with music pedagogy that merely distal FOA would result in the best outcomes for students, but it doesn't. Pedagogy focuses not just on outcomes, rather how the outcome is achieved. More often than not, greater than 90% of the time, an inexperienced student will often become a victim to their own feedback loop. Here's an example. Why do so many electric guitar players who set out to play fast end up with wildly different techniques? The pick can be moved through the strings by this way, it can be moved with rotation, it can be moved with side to side, and it can be moved with a combination motion, and it can be moved by jerking your arm back and forth. So all of these motions, they will accomplish the technique of playing fast, and maybe a study would be out there and be like, oh, these guitar players learned to play fast by jiggling their arm back and forth. We observed a variety of techniques, but they all achieved the outcome. Therefore, it's okay. And so that would be like a science perspective of like, oh, all these techniques work. But that's not the full story, because maybe the playing examples that they were asked to play in the story or in the study were simply one string patterns. So if it's one string pattern, it virtually doesn't matter what technique you use. But if it's a multi-string pattern, then you have to have a more adaptable technique. So this is very interesting stuff. Here's another thing from section 3.1. It says, the most frequent used instructions refer to an attentional focus on the body, an FOA on sound, and a control condition or control group in which generally no specific focus instructions were given. Instructions referring to a visual focus were solely used in studies with singers and investigating focus of instructions with different singing tasks. So what does all that mean? It means that there were different focuses in these different studies. Some of these studies had people focus on the body or the sound or how things felt. And what's weird about singing, especially as I'm getting into it now, is that you can't see the instrument like you can. Like, I would say having professional instruction in literally winds, brass, and or I haven't had professional instruction in winds, but brass, strings, and voice. Okay, with piano is amazing because you see everything. And there's only if someone says play A5, there's only one place possible to play A5. You can play it with 10 different fingers, but there's only one place possible to play A5. Now on guitar, if someone says play A5, there's 4 or 5 different, I don't know if it's A5, right, but an A in the same octave. I think there's going to be 4, maybe 5 places to play it, depending on the note. So you have a lot more to think about when it comes to guitar and problem solving. When it comes to brass, someone says play, let's go A4. It's a little lower because I played French horn. If someone says play A4, you could say, okay, well, do you want me to play it stopped? Do you want me to play it with trigger and 3? Do you want me to play it with trigger 1 and 2? Or do you want me to play it with open 1, 2? I think would be the fingerings for that. So there's 3 different ways to play it. But the interesting process about brass is that brass is a psychoacoustic process, meaning that you think about what the sound is, you basically guesstimate what the tension and vowel sound, cavity size, and the air pressure you need, and then you're blowing into this thing, and then only after the sound is made, really, do you get the feedback of if you're going to do it right. Whereas if piano, if you just set your finger on top of a note, and then you say, okay, I'm going to play A5, and then you go, ding, right, or whatever it is, you know exactly what sound you're going to get. Same with guitar. It's like if I put my finger right here and then I'm going to play, I know exactly what sound I'm going to get. With brass, it's like there's a chance for inaccuracy. Now with voice, it's you don't get any of that. It's like purely psychoacoustic almost, and it's purely feeling. So all of these different ways to think about and engage with music affect how you develop your technique. Okay, so the whole idea is that if you can get inside of that feedback loop and you can say, no, body, I want you to do it this way, then what you can do is you can consciously guide your technique to exactly what you want it to be instead of leaving it to chance, which is why so many people end up with so many different techniques, okay? Now, the last thing I want to go over, I could go into this all day. The last thing I want to go over is something I got from my friend Dr. Chris, who is a neuroscientist. I'll have a small portion of our interview shared here on the YouTube channel in one of the upcoming videos. Is he gave me something called 1,000 monkeys and 1,000 years or something. And it's this analogy from neuroscience where if you take 1,000 monkeys and you give them 1,000 years and you put them in a room with a typewriter, eventually they're going to write Shakespeare, okay? What does this mean for guitar? It means that if you take a bunch of guitar players and you say, I want you to play at 300 BPM, okay? And you give them 0 other guidelines, okay? And let's just say it's on 1 string, for example, okay? It doesn't matter. Eventually, given a long enough timeline, those guitar players are going to figure out, given a goal, how to play at 300 BPM one way or another, okay? The thing is there's going to be a big difference in how they get there. Now, what so many people teach is that there's shortcuts. You can do it in 2 weeks, which is a lie, because it's going to take time for your brain to literally myelinate a pathway to your hand that operates at that speed or with that level of efficiency, which even then there's sort of a limit to that. Now, what is true about all this technique stuff is that if you took, in my opinion, what the worst technique possible is, let's say you took, I'm going to grab a guitar. Let's say you did this kind of thing where there's this space and you can't mute and you're doing this. There's a space you can't mute and you're doing this. What's going to happen is this might take you longer to develop. The other thing is, so if you choose a more efficient technique, you can get to your outcome goal faster, okay? So what I did in the development of perfect picking stuff is so many people, they're like, oh, look at the greats, they're so great, look at the greats. I've never seen anyone play like that. Look how great they are. Anyways, Look at the greats. Everybody says that. So the problem is none of the greats, if you ask them, when I was at Petrucci camp, he's like, someone was like, yeah, how do you pick fast? And he's like, oh, go side to side. He's like, what's that called? I was like, abduction, adduction, sir. I was the only one in the whole room who knew the name for the motion. Okay, and that's important. That's so important. And even there was another person who I was interacting with recently who I believed they would know the name, and I was very surprised that they didn't. And I was like, oh. Anyways, so we have 1,000 monkeys, 1,000 years. Now the thing is let's say 1,000 years. What if we go to 1,020 years? Well, the chances are that the first technique that gets to 1,000 years might not be the most efficient technique. It might take 1,020 to get to the most efficient technique. But let's say that the guy who took 1,020 years to get to the outcome result actually figured out that his way was more efficient. And then he teaches all the other people. And then what happens is instead of taking 1,000 years, they only take 500 years. That's what happens. That's the real breakthrough of all this stuff, is that you can do it faster when you go through and define everything and you understand how to get your body to do the correct thing, which is exactly what I figured out with... actually, we're going to show that clip. Give me just a minute, and I'm going to pull it up. Yeah. Can I get a source for this? Okay, cool. I'm just going to show it to you on my phone real quick so you can hear it. You'll get it through the mic. It'll be kind of crappy. But, okay, so this is playing at 220 BPM. This is triplets into 16th notes, which we're going to have a whole video coming on this soon. It's going to blow your mind. Okay, so the first part goes, one lolly, two lolly, one lolly, two lolly. And then we skip into 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 1 E and a, 2 E and a. So I realize I'm not doing it for an extremely long period of time. I'm not doing it the whole clip, but listen to the part that is going there. So. And it's controlled when I get out of it too, which is very important. So now I'll show you holding it here. Hold on. All right. I'm doing. There we go. All right. Sixteenths right here. Virtually no arm movement. So the whole, this camera sucks at refocusing. So the whole, there it goes, yay. So the whole deal is, there's so many people who are like, oh, use your arm, use your arm, use your arm, use your arm. The arm is okay to use. And my whole deal is, the arm's fine to use. But guess what? You don't have to use the arm until you're at a ridiculous speed if you know what you're doing. Nobody else has figured this out. I figured it out. And I'm very excited to share it with you soon. And I have scripted probably 8,000 words or so on this stuff. The series is going to be called The 3 Pillars of Speed, which is really exciting. There's going to be more videos on speed after this, but the videos are going to be about practicing for speed and it's going to end the slow practice versus fast practice debate, because so many people are like, oh, you got to do slow practice. Oh, you got to do fast practice. So-and-so said this. Blah, 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 blah. Well, guess what? I crushed it all with a bunch of neuroscience. It's going to be great. The second video is going to be on the best movement, and then the third video is going to be on how to increase raw speed, which is this thing right here that I just showed you. The challenge with that is, frankly, even if I show you all that stuff, it's not everything you need to do for perfect picking. Perfect picking is the complete path. So if you want to join, there's a link in the chat. We've got a couple more lifetime kind of spaces, and I'm very excited about it. So I'm going to hop off now, I think, unless there's any like little last minute quick questions for anybody who's here. We'll answer those. And yeah, this was fun. I'm very excited for what's coming. I'm going to work really hard on these videos. My goal is to get them out before like Thanksgiving-ish. There's going to be traveling, so 27. So we've got just under 2 weeks left to get these done. So 2 of the scripts are done, and the movement one is the one I'm having the most trouble with because I have to explain so much science on how the body actually forms movement. So many people are like, just try to do this, just try to do that. It's like, nope. Why? It's okay. How? Like, raise your hand if you've watched a video and they're like, do this motion, whatever the motion is, and then what happens is you sit there and you try to do that motion and your body doesn't do it. How do we fix that? I fixed it. That's inside perfect picking. But the last thing I want to say, the other thing that gets really complicated about this is that because of the 1,000 monkeys and 1,000 years typewriter, 1,000 monkeys and 1,000 years of the typewriter thing, here's the caveat that you're only going to get if you watch to the very end of this live, is that, frankly, basically any picking motion will work. But the caveat to that is on a long enough timeline. If you pick a motion that's has more pros to it than cons, then it's not a matter of if you'll get there, it's a matter of when you'll get there. And, it's if you pick a bad approach, like you're using way too much wrist rotation all the time, it's almost impossible to optimize that. If you're doing this thing, impossible to optimize. So, yeah. My system, there's so many people that are like, oh, just do this, play this exercise over and over and over and over and over again. And the problem with that is that in order to truly play fast, you can't just do one thing. Which is why 3 pillars of speed for the series. You have to increase both the movement efficiency as well as the raw speed. So what does that mean? And it's the last thing, and I'm going to hang up. Movement efficiency is, let's say I'm picking guitar and I'm going like this. And I'm making this giant, like 90-degree movement. So if we increase movement efficiency, now I'm going maybe like this. If we're using a wrist rotation technique, okay? Or let's just say I'm using back and forth, okay? So my hand's moving like this. Now all of a sudden, if we take it like this, well, guess what? We can oscillate faster. But we're not oscillating faster because the signal is going to the hand faster. The only reason that we're oscillating faster is because we're making a shorter movement path. And this is a vital distinction. Again, like nobody talks about. This is a more efficient movement. Now, a faster movement is if we actually move faster. Now, here's the last thing that people miss. There's something that I learned from Dr. Chris called open and closed chain movement patterns, okay? So I'm sitting on a stool right now, okay? And you can try this too. If you're at home watching and you also happen to be on a stool, or you can sit upright. And if you try to move your arms around, and then you try to pick up your your feet and then move your arms around, the movement pattern changes. And it's kind of similar to electricity. And so when you have what's called a closed movement pattern, or you have like a reference point, such as your arm on the guitar, what your body does is completely different than if I try to demonstrate the picking motion to you in the middle of the air. So if you want to get really, 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 really technical, the neuroscience stuff I think is pretty palatable, especially the AI invents new bowling techniques thing. That's a very entertainment, easy video to watch. But if you want to get really technical, go check out the open and closed chain movement pattern stuff. Even I kind of barely understand it. Frankly, I don't think it's that important, but there's other stuff. So there's one last concept that I have to add into this whole method, and it's going to be amazing. I think it's also it's I saw this joke for project managers the other day. It said the first 90% of the project takes 90% of the time, and the last 10% takes the other 90% of the time. And so I have this last aspect to add into the perfect picking system that's going to take it from being the best to being entirely untouchable in terms of how it teaches picking, how it gets people to go faster and to be more efficient, and to literally deactivate muscles that they don't need to use when picking. It's magic. I'm so excited about it. it's gonna change it. But that, I mean, the answer, I'll just say the answers to that question lie in a 500-page book, and it's gonna take me a while to. I don't want to say I'm necessarily gonna read the whole thing. I don't think it's necessary to get the singular insight that I think that I need from it. But it's in that book somewhere, and I have to go through enough of it. So either I need to take the whole book and get the whole thing like scanned into searchable text, because I just have like a PDF of a print copy right now, which is not very searchable, or something to find that. So with all that, that's what I got going on. Working on singing, working on Luminatus, working on a lot of stuff. But we have some very good videos in the works, and I'm really excited about it. And I wanted to share with you some of the studies and things that I've been reading lately. I'll give you some shout outs. Focus of Attention in Musical Learning and Music Performance by Jesper Hohagen and Anna Immers, Immerz, DOI, what's this? DOI 10.3389. I don't know if that's the full number. Another one that you should go read definitely is The Role of Deliberate Practice in the Acquisition of Expert Performance by Erickson. That's a vital one to understand. Another one is Optimizing Music Learning, Exploring How Blocked and Interleaved Practice Schedules Affect Performance by Carter and Gran, Grahn. Another good one is Repetition and Variation in Motor Practice, a Review of Neural Correlates by Guilherme M. Lage, Lage, and Herbert Ugranauswich Tercio, Tercio. Published in around 2015. Yeah, that's a good one. Go watch the AI bowling video. That's a really good one. And yeah, we'll have some more good stuff soon.